All right. So let's talk about assessing the effectiveness. So you've got an estimate of how many errors there are per lines of code. As you see, quite a lot, 1% or more. So you got one very common one is hard-coded credentials. Like I said, you'll have a password or an API key included in the code so that someone who manages to get their hands on the source code now has a secret. Buffer overflows, SQL injection, path traversal, and remote file inclusion. These are very common vulnerabilities. So buffer overflow is primarily caused by the language C and its derivatives like C++. You have to reserve space for a variable, so if you're going to have a name that can be up to 20 letters long, you have to say that, and it reserves only that much space. And if you put in more than 20 letters, it will overflow the limited space available and change other data that it was not supposed to change. And that can lead to remote code execution, where you change some data that is eventually used as an address to control the processing, and therefore you can take over the processing. And we're doing that a lot in the 127 class. Another one is race conditions, where you have the time of check and the time of use, where your program writes some data somewhere, like in a temporary file, and then later on it reads that data to use it, but it did not properly protect that data so that it couldn't be changed by someone else in between. So now there is a brief period of vulnerability, and an attacker who can win the race can change that data between the time of check and the time of use and cause something unexpected to happen. And the most common result of this is privilege escalation. This is typically how you escalate from a limited user to administrator or system, because there is some process like antivirus running as system doing something, and you find a way to trick it into doing something unexpected with that high privilege. Cross-site scripting is a web attack where you put a script on a web page which would do something, and you trick the browser into executing that code on someone else's machine or on some other site, so that you add executable code into a web page that somebody else sees, and then you can cause their browser to do an unexpected action. And Beef is the exploitation framework that made this easy, at least in earlier versions of browsers. Cross-site request forgery is where you trick a user into executing an unintended action. For example, you can trick them into doing a bank transfer or purchasing a book when they're just trying to view a page that isn't supposed to be at that bank or at Amazon. You trick their browser into doing something on another site with the credentials automatically applied by their browser to that action. Privilege escalation, I mentioned. The most common is vertical, where you are a limited user and you want to escalate yourself to administrator or system. And of course, you're not supposed to be able to do that, but there are defects in the operating system that make it possible frequently. Horizontal escalation is where you move from one user to another user who may not be higher in overall privilege, but now you can get at that user's files and data. Backdoors, or shortcuts into the system, where that lets somebody in without having to go through the normal login process. These are commonly put in systems by the technical support people. So if you buy something, they have a secret way in, so that if you call tech support, they have some way to get in. This is essentially what happened with the early iPhones. It used to be that Apple could get in every iPhone all the time, and the cops got used to this. You could seize an iPhone from a crime scene, and you would just have a court order saying, I'm authorized to get this data, and then include a payment fee and send it to Apple, and they would send you a hard drive with all that data on it. And then, with the iPhone 5S, around that time, Apple blocked themselves out of all the iPhones. So even Apple can't get in. And the FBI got very, very angry, saying, what did you do that for? We've got this criminal's iPhone where we can't get at the data. What do you mean you can't get at the data? We expect you to have a backdoor. But Apple no longer has that backdoor. Anyway, the problem with these is bad guys can find the backdoors, and then other people can get in. Yeah, the original C language had a backdoor. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but it wouldn't be surprising. Yeah, would that be something that marketing companies use? I'm not sure what you mean, Levon. But anyway, the most common thing is for tech support. And I heard a lot of persistent rumors that Windows had a secret backdoor, but I never saw any proof of it, so I think that was a myth. But it's hard to be sure. I know it happened 4 times to Cisco in one year, that there was an extra account found on the machines, on a hard-coded backdoor that shouldn't have been there. Oh, cross-site request forgery. Well, marketing companies wouldn't use this, not legitimate marketing companies. Legitimate marketing companies would just mark you to put an ad on the page. This is what a criminal would do. You'd view my page, and then I would have like a game where you click on things, for example, and when you think you're just playing the game, you're in fact sending a signal to another tab in your browser, which is purchasing something at Amazon. That would be the sort of thing that happens here. All right. So disclosure. If you find a vulnerability in somebody's code, then if the company has paid you to audit their code and find the problems, then there's no problem. Then you're under contract, you have a non-disclosure agreement, you tell them and everything's fine. But if you do white hatting, if you find a vulnerability in somebody's product who did not ask you to do a security audit of their product, now you are in a potentially legally difficult issue. You have now investigated somebody's product without their permission, and you found something of importance, and now you got the issue of disclosure. How do you tell somebody that you found a problem? Full disclosure is where you just dump it publicly on a blog or on a full disclosure mailing list or something. Just dump it right out to the whole world. This is one possible way to do it. Responsible disclosure is what's recommended these days, where you tell the vendor privately and you give them some time to patch it rather than telling the whole world. So then the whole world hopefully won't find out until the developer has made a patch. And exactly how you tell them and how long you wait is in evolution. All right, so then you got the capability maturity model from Carnegie Mellon. This is a framework they recommend for creating quality software. So first you got your initial level of your maturity where you just write stuff and use it, and it just depends on your individual programmer, and there is no real system or anything. This is the low level of maturity. Then the next level, you have basic project management, where you can repeat the process. You can plan something and figure out how long it will take and plan the next project and have it at least sort of organized. Couldn't that be covered in the initial service contract? You refer to this slide or one before it, Levon? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Levon. Anyway. If you send more information, I'll try to come up with an answer. The previous, back here you're talking about the disclosure. Yeah, if you actually had a contract with a company, then disclosure would be specified by the contract. This issue of disclosure primarily comes from people who audit products without permission. I've done quite a bit of this, auditing Android apps, and then I find a vulnerability, and the company doesn't know I'm testing their product, and they don't really want to hear it. Yes, if you find something that you weren't supposed to, then there are a lot of issues. The immediate thing here, the big decision is full disclosure or responsible disclosure, but another issue is you might have broken a law to find it. That can happen pretty easily. And you might have violated the Digital Millennium and Copyright Act or the or other laws in a process whereby you found it. So one thing you can do is just shut up and don't tell anybody, because you're afraid you'd have to admit a crime, or try to disclose it anonymously. There's a lot of issues that come up here. In general, if you do find something, I do know a good lawyer, absolutely, because I've had legal trouble over this. I've had people get mad at me. So if you do find vulnerabilities and you want to report them, then talk to me. I can give you advice, and I can hook you with my lawyer, who is very good. And what my lawyer told me, for example, is in America, you can always go full disclosure if you want to. You're allowed to say something. If you find a defect in a product, you're allowed to dump it publicly, which I've done many times, although I do give them some chance to fix it first. But the kind of vulnerabilities I find are not like enormous ones, but most companies don't. Yeah, I want a referral. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can do that. Levon, if you send an email to sbound@ccsf.edu, I'll look for it, and if you send it today, I'll find it, and I'll send you information to my lawyer. Yes, absolutely. That's a good thing to do by email. So send it there, and I'll look for it later tonight, and I'll refer you to my lawyer. Absolutely. I do have a good lawyer. Tell me a little bit about the case. All right. I found a vuln in a cyber cafe. Owner said okay to look into it, but didn't give me written permission. Yeah. Now, and there, it's best to get it in writing, but if you have permission, maybe they won't press charges, and it depends on what you're doing. Send me a Twitter message is fine too. That's even better. Okay, good. But I absolutely do have a lawyer. I absolutely have gotten in trouble for vuln disclosure, and my lawyer is very good at handling it. So the best thing to do is talk to a lawyer as early as possible before you do stupid things that dig yourself in deeper, like notify the person in a way that admits that you've done a crime or something. This is something you'll always hear. You're talking to your lawyer early before you do stupid things, and it's a whole lot easier. I went to a Secret Service meeting with the High-Tech Crime Investigators Association, which is the Secret Service, and they had a defense lawyer there, which was unusual. And he said, I have clients that call me up, and they say, the cops pulled me over, and they looked in the window, and they said, do I have your permission they asked me, do you have guns or drugs in the car? And I said no, but I did have guns and drugs in the car. And then they asked for permission to search it. And I said yes. And they searched it and found the guns and drugs. And the lawyer says, now what am I supposed to do to help you? What you're supposed to do is not say yes. What you're supposed to do is talk to me before you say something stupid that gets you in trouble. That's why, when Trump was being impeached, the famous lawyers that handled this said, I'm not going to help him because he won't stop tweeting, he won't take my advice, and he won't pay the bill. But the first ruling a lawyer will always tell you is shut up. I do the talking, you don't do the talking. You talk to me privately, and I'm the one that talks to people so I can carefully say the right thing to get you out of trouble. Don't you go saying stupid things. Yeah, panel with Snowden. Anyway, so that's the joy of disclosure, a real hot topic these days. Anyway, so then you got defined, where you have a documented process, and managed, and optimizing, where you continuously improve it. Yeah. Yes, he does. Giuliani says he didn't pay the bill. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So there's acceptance testing of various types, user acceptance down to compliance and contract exceptions, various ways to test things. And then there's security impact of software you purchase from third party, commercial off-the-shelf software where you buy something, a standard product, and then you have vendor claims, and you might have third-party review sites deciding whether it really lives up to that. And then your main issues are whether your vendor provides support, whether they're going to go broke and stop supporting it. Then you can have custom developed products, and then it would really be important to have a service level agreement, so you know what's going to happen if there's a product, if you need a problem, if you need an update, and so on. All right. And then there's AI, all the rage. Everything is AI these days. It's coming rapidly. So you can have a knowledge base of if-then statements, which the expert system will use to make decisions, and an inference engine, which then follows those conditions to decide what to do. You can have a neural network which simulates a human brain and how it learns, where you have nodes connected to other nodes and outputs, and then you give it training, where you give it some task and it tries to do it, and you tell it whether it succeeded, and then it tries to adjust the processing of these steps to try to succeed more often. So it learns to do something, instead of you train it the way you would train an animal, practicing something, not programming it the way you would normally write a program. And there's Bayesian filtering, is where you just look for the probability of words in good mail versus bad mail, and then you try to decide, make a system that can remove the spam without removing too much of the good mail. And there are genetic algorithms where you make multiple artificial intelligence systems, and then you let them mate and reproduce, where they combine the code of two of them and make children, and then they're somehow tested and killed off if they're too defective, and you hope they will evolve into a more efficient system. All right. So you got another Kahoot. All right. I think that's it. All right. What does PHP typically suffer from? File inclusion. I didn't see it in the slides, and it should have been there, but that's local file inclusion and remote file inclusion are typically what's wrong with PHP, because it typically has a file name in the URL that can be changed. All right, what's a race condition? Time of check, time of use. All right, what's caused by leaving test code in a production product? That's a backdoor. All right. All right. What's Carnegie Mellon's software quality framework? Yep, the capability maturity model. All right. All right, that's Roman.